It is 6 p.m. On this January 21st, I will call this special town council meeting to order. Recognize there is a quorum present. Welcome those who are here in the chambers, although it looks like all staff, planning commission members, Chief Clark. Thanks for being here. Thanks for those who are tuned in online. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Dwyer?
Here.
Mr. Parrott?
Here.
Mr. Yolen?
Here.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is adoption of our very short and brief agenda. If there's no changes, do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Make a motion to adopt it. Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Does anyone wish to make a declaration of personal interest concerning the item on the agenda this evening? Not hearing any, we will move into our item, which is a request to approve comprehensive agreement with the English Construction on the Farmville Fire Station. Mr. Davis, do you have any additional comments at this time?
No, sir, just the 52-page agreement.
Mr. Yolen was concerned. He saw redacted pages in there.
Yes, because they were other options that were given during the proposal process, and since those aren't being chosen, they're still redacted and they're not open to the public.
Thank you.
10-4. So this is just to approve the agreement with English Construction to move forward with English Construction on the expansion, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any discussion at this time?
I'd like to ask a question. If I read correctly in there, there is a comment about the fact of over and above the bid, there's a possibility that cost incurred could possibly increase the bid to run over from what they've quoted up to $445,000, I believe it is.
My understanding is the only way it'll go up is if there's any change orders.
So we're locked in otherwise.
Unless it's our change orders that increase the price. If it's theirs, it's not.
Good deal. I'm fine then.
Yeah, I got really quick. I had to sit down and type out this. I feel like we need to put a pause on this for a couple of months, or at least until we know how much the Venable Street cave-in and the pumping station are going to cost. We've also had a large number of water breaks. The sewer pumping station will need to be replaced, as well as the possibility that more will need to be replaced sooner than later. We'll be paying for the firehouse for the next 25 to 30 years. It doesn't seem that our infrastructure will last that long. We're going to have this money from the bond. We do have the money from the bond right now. Whether it can be used temporarily for some of these types of projects is something I would love to see us discuss before we make a decision to spend this money on the firehouse building. I'm not saying not to do the firehouse building. I'm just saying that I would like to see us hold off for a little bit. We have no idea how extensive the damage to the Venable is until we get the engineering study back. We need to know how much it will be and where the money will come from without raising taxes again before we move forward with this. We need to discuss other options to make sure they have what they need to be safe before we get ourselves in a bind financially with these other infrastructures issues. Will the cost for the street be $100,000 or $10 million? Will the cost for the pumping station be $100,000 or $10 million? No one has any idea, or just don't have any idea what it's going to be. That's all I had.
Okay. Does anyone else have any items up for discussion? Not hearing any. Does anybody wish to make a motion to approve the agreement with English Construction for the fire station?
I move that we approve the comprehensive agreement with English Construction, Inc. on the Farmville Fire Station.
Second.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion at this time? Ms. McKay, can you have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
No.
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
On a vote of 5-1, the motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Well, that concludes the special meeting business. Is there any other items need to be discussed at this time? We do have our regularly scheduled work session for next month. And if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Those opposed? Ayes have it. We'll have a brief pause and we'll get set up for our joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and then we'll open those meetings, myself and the chair of the Planning Commission. We'll go through that meeting, and eventually the council will close their meeting, the Planning Commission will close their portion of the joint meeting, and then the Planning Commission will move into their regular meeting. So bear with us.
Huh? That's how we usually do things, is it not? We tend to be very silent.
Come sit on the girl side.
No, it's okay. Patrick. I guess so.
All right. I guess I will start off and gavel us in and call to order Town Council for the joint meeting of the Farmville Town Council and Farmville Planning Commission. And then cede the floor to the chair of the Planning Commission.
Hereby gavel in the meeting of the Planning Commission, Farmville Planning Commission. Thank you, sir.
All right. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call for council, please?
Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott,
Here.
Mr. Yolen, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Hardy,
Here.
There's also Mr. Dvorak. You want to give us a roll call, please, for the Planning Commission?
Yes, sir. Dr. Miller? Here. Ms. Fraley? Here. Mr. Crute?
Here.
Mr. Patterson?
Here.
Mrs. O'Connor?
Here.
Ms. French? Here. Mr. Weiss? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have the adoption of the agenda by council. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Those opposed? Ayes have it. Does anyone wish to make a declaration of personal interest concerning the item on the agenda? Not hearing any. We are here for the comprehensive plan updates for 2026. joint discussion with the Planning Commission members. We are grateful that y'all have graced us and allowed us to, in fact, grace your meeting. So we appreciate that hospitality on this third Wednesday here in Farmville. Mr. Davis, who's going to start this off?
I'm going to leave it to Ashley and Robert to do the presentation.
I'm just going to roll into a presentation of items that staff has corrected through the introduction, through economic development, economic section. So on the acknowledgements page, the first thing we found was that Farmville was misspelled, so we just corrected that spelling. Moving into the environment section, we updated the flood zones map with the 2019 FEMA data. Moving into cultural resources, on page 19, we removed and one contributing monument, the Confederate monument, being that monument is no longer located within the historic district. So we struck that out. We updated the cultural resources map. We removed Longwood University from Longwood Village. We removed the five county fairgrounds since that is not within the town limits. We added the Moton Museum Overlay District and the park on Andrews Drive. Then moving into population and housing. We updated most of this data with 2020 census data and the 2023 American Community Survey 5-year estimates. So on page 23, we updated population and age for Farmville and Prince Edward County. On page 24, we updated, actually, I'm going to hand this part over to Robert because Robert did all the updating on the data. I think you might be able to explain that data better than I can.
Let's see, page 24. Let's see, race demographics, percentage of population identifying as white only and identifying as black only, and high school graduation rate, median household income, poverty rate for Farmville, Prince Edward County, and the national rate, percent of poverty in the 18 to 24 age range. We didn't update any of the context that this data fits into, just the raw numbers itself. And then on page 25, the number of housing units, the percent, single-family homes as a percent of housing units, the percent of occupancy of those units, the median home value for Farmville, Prince Edward County, and then the percent of homes with 2 or more bedrooms, the percent of homes with 3 or more bedrooms, and then the percent of homes built before 1989, and the percent of homes built after 2010, and then the percent of homes built after 2010 for Prince Edward County. And then on page 26, we have percent of mortgaged housing units that are cost burdened in Farmville and for Prince Edward County, and then the percent of renters that are cost burdened in Farmville and for Prince Edward County. And that wraps up the population and housing updates. And again, this was a mix of 2020 census and 2023 ACS 5-year estimates. And the difference in those is that the ACS estimates are just that. They're a much smaller sample size that they then extrapolate into locality-wide estimates. And then for the section on the economy, let's see, I think, yeah, you did some, an update to the economic drivers map, updated with the new Main Street district boundary, amended goals and strategies. Let's see. So number 2, work with Seed Innovation Hub and Virginia's Heartland Regional Economic Development Alliance to increase economic development opportunities. And then goal 4, to consider working with a consulting service to promote and actively seek potential economic development initiatives.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I apologize. I don't want to interrupt here.
Yeah, please.
I'm trying to follow along with your corrections and all. The numbers of the pages you're giving me aren't adding up to the ones that I have listed in front of me. Can you help me out here, Dr.
Sure.
Davis?
Which, do you have a specific?
108 right now.
39 of 108?
Wait, I don't know which.
Oh, is that in your packet?
41.
Go back to the economy one. What page was that on, please? The graph, the chart.
Which chart? Which chart?
The economy. You just read about the economy, please.
Mr. Yolen, I think
What
what
channel?
they're talking about is the page number in the actual comprehensive
Correct.
plan now. It's not the same, correct?
They're,
You're-
they're 9 or 10 pages. It seems they're 9 or 10 pages off. The graph, the chart, the map is on page 40.
Okay. So,
Oh, packet versus, yep.
yeah, okay.
Yes. Okay, and then on page 32 of the comprehensive plan, let's see, we added updates to the percent of residents that work in town limits, the income bracket, and that's a range of salaries, labor force participation rate, and employment by industry.
So that number's gone up from 30 to 40 on commute outside of town for work. Is that accurate since the last time we did this?
I'm sorry, which data?
The number of citizens who commute outside of town for employment has gone up 10%. Is that accurate? I'm basing it off my recollection, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, I don't have the,
You don't have the past? Okay.
Mayor, I have the old one. You are correct. It says, while 30% commuted outside of the town for work. As of the original time this was done.
Okay, thank you. Just interesting.
yes.
Page 33. I think that was updates to the.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was the labor force participation rate.
And then on page 35 was to remove the Atlantic Coast Pipeline sentence. So that was all the updates that staff noted. We'll turn it over to both the Planning Commission and Town Council for discussion.
Excuse me. And I should have brought this up earlier, but I'm just curious, we're aware of the discrepancy between the actual people living in Ward B because of the census that was taken or mistaken last time around, and Ward's boundaries changed significantly because of that, because there was a large amount of population supposedly living near Greenfronts or in Waterfront Park or wherever that was. Can we do anything to correct that on our end, or do we have to wait for federal numbers to come back and do that?
We have to wait for the next census.
Is there a way to appeal that or to get the paperwork in so that they can start looking at that originally?
There is an appeal process soon after the data becomes available.
We had that option
We had that
after the
option.
last census, but because of timing was the timing up against? There was a timing issue that had we contested that redistricting and the injection of noise, that we would have been then on the back end of something economic, something financial, and I can't recall what it was at the time. But there was a reason we chose not to fight it in that moment. But yes, the next census will come up. If they try to inject noise, there should be an appeals process, but it usually happens shortly after the census.
Thank you.
Well, anything else, Ms. Austin?
That's all from the staff side.
Is there any pressing issues that council is concerned about when it comes in regards to the comprehensive plan? Planning Commission is here. We can have a discussion about it before they move on into that. Anyone here have any discussion items they wish to bring up?
We're just going over the first 3 chapters this time around. Is that correct, or is this the all-encompassing?
No, this is just the introduction through economy.
How many chapters is that?
You know, if you don't count the introduction, it's 4.
Environment, cultural resources, population, housing, economy.
Thank you again.
I know from my perspective, I guess I'll jump in here briefly. Economy-wise, obviously, we have, an explosion of data center interest in Virginia and construction in Virginia. So that is an interesting topic of discussion. I'm not sure we have much in the way of site plan, but we do know that there's site plan on the outskirts of town that will impact us greatly in movement there. Solar, the town does have a revenue sharing ordinance in effect, and we do have one small solar project of about 84 acres already. From my perspective, my personal interest is in trying to align what we say. I just exploded that Purell single on myself. Trying to align what we say our aspirations are when it comes to housing and affordable housing with actual implemented legal pathways. And I know that's more leaning into in the future and revisiting the subdivision ordinances and those sort of things. But that would just be my point of thought, is to keep in mind that the language that we have in this comp plan, I think, is largely good language and still holds strong, but that I'm not sure we've collectively striven as diligently as we can towards accomplishing some of those goals. In that vein, I'm speaking of, stuff like setbacks and lot sizes and things that tend to make people a little uncomfortable because it's going to be in their backyard. But if we truly want to get to diverse housing, then we have to begin to have less regulation when it comes to some of those zoning edifices so that we can have more flexible options. I know my first year we talked about PUDs at length. At that time, I remember in one of my rare long monologues, I feel like I'm having now, I talked about if we don't increase our tax base, at some point we'll have to increase our tax revenue in another way. And that usually comes in the way of increasing taxes, and that has transpired in those 3 years. So once again, I think we have to close the gap between what we say our aspirations are and legal pathways to get there. I am more than comfortable with you folks coming up with those pathways and laying it at your seat. But that's just my 2 cents.
I have to say, I agree with a lot, and that we do need to have more housing, and it needs to be more affordable and easier to build and less regulations, less zoning requirements. And I don't know what the rules are with the state as far as what we can do, what the state requires in state code, and what we can say, state code says this, but we don't have to follow that. We can do this and it's still good. But yes, definitely deregulate a little bit to make it a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier for folks to build homes in town. And I definitely agree with the mayor on that.
Any additional discussion? Planning Commission members have anything they want to jump in there? I know you guys are mainly sitting down there at the whims of us up here. But any additional comments, Chair Miller?
Well, thank you again for having us here and for all the work that y'all did to update some of the data. We got your message loud and clear. I think some of those, in terms of either reducing regulations or revising regulations, I think that doesn't occur so much in the comprehensive plan, if I remember correctly, but more in some of those ordinances, which would be, we're happy, and I think we have the experience to make some of that happen. So we'll be excited to start working on that as soon as it's possible to do so. I guess my question is kind of getting back to the comprehensive plan. Is do y'all have a sense of what the process is for this? And by that I mean, is this something you want to discuss this evening? I mean, there's some updates, the statistical and data updates that have been made. There's some other topics I think that, we could discuss in terms of some other things that the feedback that the Planning Commission, I think council made that aren't included in this, that we could discuss. But I don't know if that's something that's appropriate to do so this evening, or if you want us to share that feedback with staff and then route it, back through us and then to y'all. I guess what's y'all's preferences in terms of the process and the scope of what we're doing here?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Mr. Chairman, is it relative to the chapters that we're on tonight that we would discuss? The goal here was to break it down into pieces, and so the easiest way so far was these four were easier and it's in order, right? There's not as much really to change. When we get to the transportation piece, that'll be on its own because there is some update to transportation. And one of the things to that is urban growth area designation.
The designated growth area.
Designated
a
growth
DGA.
area. And so that'll be in there so that we do get more opportunity for grant funding from the state and VDOT. And then the others we would do together, community facilities and land use, probably together, but transportation would be by itself. So we're looking at least 2 more meetings before collectively to say we're ready to go for the Planning Commission to approve the amended version and for a public hearing, and then the council for a public hearing for the amended version. And then the next step is to tackle, after we finish with the comp plan amendments, is to roll into areas of the subdivision and zoning ordinances, which will take us quite some time from that period. So I don't know if that was helpful of what's for discussion tonight, but we're looking really to lock down these 4 chapters tonight of making sure we have all the edits that both parties want, and then move on to the other sections at an additional meeting.
So what you're saying is what we're talking about is what we'll discuss at a later, it would be more pertinent to a later chapter.
You talking about housing? What piece?
Well,
Yeah,
like the housing, like setback stuff and the lot size and all that is a subdivision ordinance discussion, for
Yes.
sure. That is a later aspect here. I just wanted to make sure that we're all cognizant that the language that's in here is language that I'm not sure we have actively closed the gaps on implementation.
Right, because we say
Yeah.
we want to promote housing, we want to promote diversification in housing and all those things. So if that hasn't changed, which we didn't think it has changed, then that stays the way it is. It's a matter of how we change it from the zoning perspective to make it easier to build those, which is lot sizes and things like that. But for tonight, we're looking at what is if the areas that are in the comp plan as far as the language in it, are we satisfied in what these changes are? Do we want more changes in these 4 sections? And then we'll move on to the other ones.
So there are, if I'm hearing you correctly, we're trying to nail down and finalize the language of the sections we have in front of us. Then yes, there are some things I'd like to bring up for discussion. And some of them range from, accuracy. The statistics you have about Longwood aren't correct. You're saying Longwood's enrolling 5,000 students. That's including about 1,000 online MBA students. And I'd say maybe only a handful of them live locally. Moreover, that number you have, if you want to look at undergraduates, you're counting all undergraduates, which include dual enrollment and part-time students. And so in terms of like the numbers that you say, you got Longwood students living in the community, that's probably half. There's only half of what y'all got in there. So I think that merits fixing.
Yeah.
The second thing is like, then
Mr.
you got,
Chairman, a quick qualifier. We did not update any Longwood information from the previous version of the comprehensive plan.
that needs to be updated then. The second thing is, you have also with Longwood, just because it's on the mind, is again, but I think it affects what you're talking about in terms of Longwood as an economic engine. I think education's Longwood's third largest major now. It's third behind business and behind education. And so I do think there are opportunities to try to recruit, especially, entrepreneurial-minded students to stay here. Likewise, healthcare professionals as well. So I think, you need to please address that. But then there's some other kind of language stuff. Like, this is things, again, that were shared with y'all. And so if it doesn't merit inclusion, I'd welcome hearing why not, or having a discussion about it. Again, there's this kind of push in some of that housing about, especially a diversity of housing that serves the need of young professionals and senior citizens, and that's certainly the case. But we're in a point now where, working class families and service industry folks can't afford homes. And so I think we need to kind of recognize that this is a problem not affecting just, certain age demographics of certain, professional groups too. A couple other things, maybe going in order when you're looking at historical and cultural resources. Reference is made to the historic district on the old page 19, which encompasses that historical district that was established, I think back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I appreciate the character of your architecture in this district, and I understand that the designation doesn't kind of confer anything, any special considerations respecting town ordinances. Nevertheless, the reference to it seems to imply some kind of special consideration of its significance. I think a significance that's not being considered to other historic neighborhoods in this town, including the African-American neighborhoods along Griffin Boulevard and Hill Street and elsewhere that have been subject to radical changes, ranging from eminent domain by Longwood to, recent rezoning decisions, especially at the corner of Redford and Griffin. And we've heard from at the Planning Commission that, the residents of this area are sensitive to, the historical character of their neighborhood. And they, in some instances have, pushed back, again, in other instances, against people asking for rezoning or special use permits, including for convenience stores. And so, maybe the horse is already out of the barn with some of all the, the blue sky and all the other kind of rental properties that have come there. But nevertheless, I think I'd welcome at least, I don't know if my fellow commissioners feel this way, a consideration of what's the town's obligation to be mindful to the integrity and character of other historic neighborhoods that aren't already kind of designated as such. So I think, I'd welcome a discussion of that sensitivity if we're going to want to talk about those topics tonight. I think also, too, just a couple other minor things. There's a Heartland Workforce Development Center that's referenced on page 29 of the old comprehensive plan. Is that something that's still planned? I haven't heard much about it. I don't know if some of these things have stagnated since COVID or if they're still on, but I think if we're going to use this as an opportunity to think about our strategies, broadly speaking, then I'd like to hear kind of what the status of some of these things are.
You're talking about the regional economic development? That's housed over there at the Seed Innovation Hub. He has an office.
The Workforce Development Center?
No, the new economic development regional group.
Right.
That includes Prince Edward, Charlotte, Buckingham, Cumberland, I can't name them all off the top of my head, but the executive director of that organization is in Midtown in that office with C Innovation Hub.
Yes, sir. I'm
We
talking
added
about,
that.
there is a, it's goals and strategy number 2. And this is on the one that's like page 39 of 108. And this is work with regional partners to locate a Heartland workforce development
That was
center.
removed.
Yeah, that was one of the ones.
That's the one on the screen that we changed.
Right.
I think our confusion is that none of the strategies ended up in the edits to the strategy.
But then, Mr. Mayor, to kind of echo what you've already brought up, I mean, one of the things when this solar project came up before us is we didn't have anything in the comprehensive plan. And again, this comprehensive plan is designed to be a point of reference and guidance to inform some of our decisions. Now, fortunately, we were able to kind of come up with a plausible, reasonable decision on that. But I'd rather not find ourselves, gun decking this kind of stuff. If there's no guidance. And again, I know it's already been approved, but it's not yet been built. And so, again, if that, for whatever reason, hopefully doesn't, falls through the crack and something comes up again, I mean, I'd like to think about that. Likewise, even if the potential data center is on the edge of town, I mean, that's something that's going to play a role in our economic development. So I'd like to welcome a discussion on how that plays into economics. If that is part of our economic strategy, given that that line does run through, the edge of town, on the periphery of town. I mean, I personally think it'd be scandalous not to take an opportunity of that. But that's all I got to say. I don't know if the other commissioners have anything else to add.
Mr. Miller, could you do me a favor, being that the discussion about Longwood University, just state that you are an employee of Longwood University, for the record.
I'm a proud employee of Longwood University, the
Thank
third
you.
oldest public university in the great Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you. Just for legal purposes, you brought up, and you are an employee.
Mr. Mayor, is there a date in which the body wants this complete by?
Is there a date in which council wants this done by? I think that might be.
I think we had discussed this, didn't we, Mr. Mayor, that this is not, and Dr. Davis, that this is not something we have to rush. We'd rather have it be right. Am I correct? As long as we're working on it, it doesn't really matter.
We do have to approve the transportation section in April, before April, to get that DGA into VDOT. But that is the only section that we have a timeline on.
Thank you, Ms. Austin.
So at a minimum, one chapter approved in the next 90 days.
We do
So-
need that, yes.
So where I'm going with this is, while I understand staff's approach to break it down by section or sections, especially given the level of detail and that is required from updating the data and whatnot, which I appreciate. I do think it's worthwhile for us to have this conversation and then give the planning commission time to go back and think through some of the strategies that are relevant to our discussion. And at that point, it's not a staff thing to go and really thinking about the top pages of each chapter where we're talking about goals and strategies. That's a wordsmithing and relatively philosophical conversation that we as the body need to go and have, and then make some recommendations for staff. So I just, as we kind of continue through this, I think it would be helpful for me at least to be able to hear y'all's input and then us go back and deliberate and wordsmith some of the things so that we're aligning with the future, but also with, quite frankly, some of the scar tissue that we've all experienced from issues over the past several years where it has been part of a conversation in both our bodies, like what does the comprehensive plan say about this, or should we wait for a comprehensive plan update before we make this decision? So I think just giving us space and time, both our bodies to have that conversation is important.
I did have one planning commissioner that was not able to make it tonight.
Okay.
And he did ask if I would read a couple comments from him.
Okay.
He said on page 29, the goals and strategies for the economy. Promote, attract, and retain economic development by revitalizing 3rd Street end-to-end within the town limits in the southern area by the town's only interstate equivalent all-way interchange where South Main, US 15 Business, and US 460 bypass intersect, also known as the areas on both sides of South Main by the hotels Valero, Sheets, including Clark Street, William Street, and Spring Valley Road. He said, by, among other steps, rezoning as much of these areas as possible to commercial, B1, B2, and B3 as appropriate, and consider the same but necessarily smaller scale for the area along North Main Street within the town limits on the north side of the Appomattox River. And then he had a comment on page 36 for economic initiatives. And given that the town still does not have its own economic development director or a formal econ development function, work with Prince Edward on those responsibilities. And I have talked to Dr. Davis, and we do have a contract with a company that we use, Retail Strategies, for economic development. So that is something that the town not necessarily has an employee for, but does have a consultant for.
Thank you. Was that Commissioner Weiss?
Commissioner Rice, yes, sir. Weiss, yes, sir.
One thing I just want to mention real quick, if we're back to facilities that we do have on the drawing board the bathroom facilities over at Lions Park. Is that something we want to include as something we're going to be building?
That would come under community facilities, which not a chapter that we are addressing tonight.
So just for reiteration, the goal of the joint meeting was to have discussion. So, I mean, you can have as much discussion tonight over the different things. I mean, the goal was, from the very beginning, if you remember, was to have meetings like this so that the two bodies could discuss back and forth the things I think Mr. Kroop was talking about and Dr. Miller of the strategies and all those things. The staff is bringing things that we know are outdated, right? Like the one that you mentioned, Dr. Miller, about it was something different in number 2. So we added what actually exists now, which is the Seed Innovation Hub, the new Regional Economic Development Alliance. And then number 4 at the time was that we would consider
the town's need for a dedicated economic
development director. And so we did that, and we realized at the time after that, looking what you're going to pay for a true economic development director for a town our size is just not possible when you can hire a consultant for services to market your areas for economic development. And so we changed those from a staff perspective so that it is up to date to where we are and moving forward into the future. So I think the goal of this was for those discussions to happen mutually so that you have an agreement, not just the Planning Commission coming up with strategies, kind of like we find ourselves with ordinances, right? Planning Commission comes up and has an ordinance, council has a different opinion. If we can get all the opinions in one meeting, we save a lot of time on this particular item of coming together and having that discussion together on these things and coming to an agreement, moving to the next areas in the comprehensive so that we can have a passage by at a public hearing to planning commission and a passage by the council. If only you all work on it as a planning commission and you decide to move forward and have a public hearing and then they don't have any say in, I mean, we did this when this was formed, if you remember. Who was on the planning commission then? Dr. Miller? Yes. There's 3 or 4 of you at least. That's how we did it. The consultant came, brought us the information in pieces. The 2 met, combined to discuss those, and then each voted at a public hearing for it. This is the same concept. There's just no consultant this time. So that, I mean, that was our plan for this discussion for tonight and in general moving forward.
Can we maybe get a copy of what Mr. Weiss said? Because, I mean, I know you read through it, and I'd love to be able to sit and read, because some of that might be something we want to add and we could all agree on. And while we're on this page 29, we have number 5 says actively market Farmville as a tourist destination within Virginia and nationally. How about something along the lines of, we want people to come here and move here, so not just necessarily visit, but figure out a way to market us as hey, live here and work remotely. 2 of my neighbors, work remotely from home, and I would love to be able to promote that more, because we got pretty good high-speed internet available, and I don't know how to add that in there. That would be something that would be kind of cool.
So, Mayor, do you got any ideas on how you want to proceed with a mutual discussion? I mean, that sounds great. Let's.
I gave my piece. I think some of your statements about making sure language is in there that doesn't leave y'all on the lurch when solar comes back up, and sort of planning for contingencies around what this data center may or may not bring to us are pertinent. But I, like I said, I have trust, and I don't have much as far as wanting to put my thumb on the scale of what y'all are doing personally. Does anyone up on council have any pressing concerns regarding environment, cultural resources, population, housing, or economy that you want to impart or discuss with our counterparts here on the Planning Commission?
I do, like Mr. Miller, calling attention to the other historic districts and the other historic relevance of the population, of the buildings and the facilities here in town. I think that's really admirable. I think we should also, Mr. Miller, you were involved with the, what is it, the signpost, the paintings on the ground and historic. We might want to, and this is totally probably the town's responsibility, but we'd like to update those. They're kind of getting a little bit worn down for the historical significance. Keep them bright and shiny. We can do that. I volunteer to help if you'd like.
Mr. Yo, you're talking about the Civil Rights Walking Trail?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
We have we no longer had any more of the stencils. Thank you. And so I worked with Moten. Moten has gotten new stencils. It's a matter of the town crews going back and painting them. So those are we'll be taking care of those. I did have a question for conversation purposes, Dr. Miller. You mentioned the historic district designation. Were you talking about the housing designation, like where Not the Main Street designation, but the actual housing designation of homes that are on the historic registry in town?
Yes, sir, that's correct. That's what I was referring to.
Okay. So those are in the comp plan because those are actually cited as locations in the, it's a, the Virginia Department of Historic Resources allows a locality to identify, Robert knows what I'm just trying to get it out. Designate housing based on a period of time, and it's a process that's not mandatory. It's I'm not finding the right word. Voluntary process. And so when that was done, way before I think any of our time here, that was
It
done.
was last updated in 2016, was the
Okay.
last update.
So somebody else had asked to be added to that.
Yes,
Okay.
and it is.
So originally they set up a district, and then in that district, in my prior life, then they come and look at the actual housing units. I don't disagree with you that African American neighborhoods have history in historic housing. It's a matter of it being identified by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources on a voluntary basis by what I think the comprehensive plan is talking about. Can we say there are historical homes, but separate from what is on the registry? I think there's a way to do that. But if we're looking to do it on the registry, I think we would have to put something in the comprehensive plan that is something that we want to move towards. Is that in the fashion that your discussion was as far as what your comments?
I guess,
So I'm clear.
let me kind of back up and maybe kind of offer the rationale for the thought on that. And there's 6 different criteria which you can use to get on the state registry, which is a prerequisite to get to the national registry. So architecture, some of it is one criteria, but there's others as well. And I guess it comes back to thinking about, as the introduction says, to the comprehensive plan. If this is a document that, its purpose is to, and forgive me for quoting, should be relied upon by the town staff as well as elected and appointed leaders as they weigh the merits of land development applications, construct the town's annual budget, and make many other decisions for the future of the town. For example, and I'll kind of bring up 2 specific examples. When on the corner of High Street and Oak Street in Griffin, there was a request to rezone some property some years ago. And that was ultimately denied based on what was, the zoning, but based on what was in the comprehensive plan. And so again, I think when applications come before us for conditional use permits, but also, rezoning requests, if there's something in the comprehensive plan that we can point to that says, we don't feel comfortable in rezoning something or approving that conditional use permit because, that encroaches upon an historically significant community, that's not in here right now. So that doesn't give us the guidance that town staff, appointed elected officials, and appointed leaders as they weigh the merits of land development applications. So, I think if that's something that we as 2 different bodies collectively think we need to be sensitive to, and we need that guidance, so we welcome that guidance. Again, not just today, not just for the people sitting here. This is a generational document. Is that something we need to think about more than just, this one and that one? Do we need something or to encourage us to begin pursuing that application? I happen to know someone that's really kind of good with those applications. And so, that's what I guess I'm inviting us to think about, discuss about. if people are willing to have that conversation. I'm happy to be a solitary voice in the wilderness here.
No, no, you're not a solitary voice in the wilderness here. You're not even close to that. That's a very valid point, and it is a conversation that we've had before, and that we've never really had the structure that we need to decide on that. We want to grow Farmville, but we also want to maintain a certain character and charm, if you will, and not just pave over old Sears houses and turn them into parking lots or something like that. If we have a choice about that, it's kind of I see what you're trying to say. I don't know how we can move that, how we can address that. Does it have to be a legal requirement? Does it have to be a historic district as we think of it as a town, but do we have to take it to the state level and then to something else?
Well, even those that are on the historic registry, there's nothing that keeps somebody from tearing it down. It doesn't keep, just because we designated historical, it doesn't mean that it can't be torn down. There's nothing in the Department of Historic Resources that says that when you make these voluntary districts and the houses that are in them, there's nothing that says that if they're taken down, what you run the risk of is once you take down a certain percentage of those in the district, they can take the district away. But there's nothing from a zoning standpoint of saying if I buy, I mean, thank goodness somebody bought the one on the corner of Second and High, right, and fixing it up. Now, they're modifying it. Does it change the historical character? Potentially, but the part of it is still there. But it could have been torn down years ago because it was so dilapidated. It wouldn't have taken that historic designation away from the whole area. It was just that it was to a point where it couldn't be brought back potentially. That you don't lose it just by one. If you take down a percentage, you can.
I feel like I'm a little bit confused about the I know what a historical home is, but do you have to have a certain, you don't, insurance-wise, you don't want your house on the historical registry because it is very hard to handle and hard to insure. But a historic district, you're just talking about homes that are historically significant. They don't necessarily have to be on the historical register. Or do you have to have a certain percentage of them on the register? Or, I don't know what the rules are. You can just say, is that what you're saying? Is it just, it's just an area where you want to try to preserve what's there? And I think that's a good idea.
My thought is, even in that opening paragraph, if you added the line, we consider and understand the historical significance of Griffin Boulevard, Hill Street corridors, it then at least allows the Planning Commission as a body, when things are brought forth, for us to pause and give consideration. Oftentimes when recommendations are brought forth on different things, the comp plan is cited as a justification as to whether or not to recommend or put something forth. So I think the language allows us to pause and think and consider, even if it's not preventing us from still potentially making a decision to make an adjustment. So, that would be my thought as a reason to go back and look at that a bit more broadly. And for me, some of the recent projects, when we changed the zoning in parts of Griffin, it was just something that we heard loud and clear from some individuals that remain in the residential parts of that district.
And I think you're right, Cam. I think that consideration lines up well with the fact that we have that Moton overlay district that already starts around the museum and seeks to protect that area. And if there's just a recognition that we're going to keep some of that protection in mind for those surrounding neighborhoods as well.
and actually add to it? Is that, is that what we're saying, is we want to actually, Griffin and Hill is a great section. I mean, there's also, and I'm just throwing it out here, Virginia Street, there are some really cool houses there, and they range from big, huge monster things to just single family homes that, that are just neat and very historical. But I mean, are we talking about trying to figure out where the other, have the wording so that we're figuring out where these other places are and try to add them? Is that what we're trying to do, Cam?
Mr.
So-
Mayor, if I could, I want to comment on Cameron's, is that I think, so I understand what you're talking about, is it'll give an alert of when there's a rezoning case and those types of things, not necessarily, because we're talking about things that would be coming before the planning commission and the council. So you're talking about special use permits, zoning cases, not your house that somebody decides, hey, I'm going to tear this down and rebuild it. We can't do anything about that, but we can do something about the rezoning or special use permit and those types of things, or conditional use permit, I should say. So that's really what that language would help the decision-making piece of.
That's how I look at it. I think when we gave consideration to the last project on Griffin Boulevard, the conversation centered around, are we ready and willing to move ourselves away from the last remaining bit of residential character that the area has? And I mean, I'm fine that before you finalize such language, you kind of think more broadly throughout town to ensure that there are not other areas that might be worth adding, but none of it takes away the ability for strong projects to still move through. It just gets us thinking.
I think so. Excuse me. Second Street, a lot of varied housing there also, but probably the oldest house I understand in the town of Farmville is on Second Street. Not a lot of other ones, but you're right, there may be other areas outside of the existing historic designation.
The key with that is to be mindful, if that is already like what we're talking about is zoning again, is if that is already zoned primarily or all residential, you can't spot zone anyway. So I'll use Mr. Hardy, not in any other fashion, but Virginia Street, there's not any commercial there. So the likelihood of it changing from residential is very unlikely that we would have that coming before either anybody. Griffin is a different story because it does have some of those, and you've got state use already on one side. Second, somewhat, because you do have commercial that backs up to it, but as you go down, so those are things for y'all to think about, is where it's actually located. Of, do you want to list all those names of streets? Because what does it have the potential long-term, years from now, as we're talking, to be anything other than residential, if we're talking about that? And if not, I don't know that you really have to name it in there, because it'd be very difficult for it to be all rezoned in totality.
And I'll point out Virginia Street, you're exactly right. Most all of that is residential, except for Longwood's, what you call it, they've got there, their shop. And then also Roche's Florist. And that's where it stops, right there at Putney, and then everything else it's no longer residential. But yeah, there's almost none, but I don't want to mess Longwood up, and I definitely don't want to mess up Roche's, and they're with what they've got going.
I appreciate the sentiment both from Mr. Miller and Mr. Patterson, and the language Mr. Patterson used there to pause. There were decisions made about that stretch, and I'm not sure that pause was considered as diligently as it could have been. So I appreciate that sentiment from both of y'all. Any additional discussion at this time?
Well, do we want to talk about the solar? Do we want to talk about that? I mean, we're here. I mean, if Dr. Davis wants to hash this out tonight, I mean.
Not totally. I mean, if y'all want to come back with some more, I mean, if you feel like we want to do some more homework and everybody read it a little bit more and come up with some more ideas, that's fine. I'm not.
I'll say you can do solar if you want to keep it in an economic standpoint, not a land use standpoint.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought land use definitely is of interest to me in the future, and I think that plays a strong part there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk, you can talk about it in both, technically, but at the end of the day, I don't know that we have any more pieces of land that benefit, well, a solar company. Not saying that we don't want to put something in there to maybe address it. It's, do we have any more land in town? That's something for us to think about that would house something like that.
Dr. Davis, am I correct that there's conversation at the state level about where it will reside in terms of who kind of oversees the issue?
There are plenty of bills right now in the legislature that the governing body needs to be calling their legislators or VML to share their concern with zoning bills and whatever side of the fence you're on. I mean, of the issue. There's many right now that are out there that want to take authority away from localities on some topics. And that's a whole different, probably joint meeting for y'all to discuss of your opinions. But they're kind of fast paced in Richmond, so we probably somebody needs to make a decision on some of these of what we want to do. But for this piece, from a land use and economy, my perspective for both bodies is yes. I mean, do we want any more? Then we can put something in. Would we maybe have to change it after this legislative session? Potentially, depending on what that is.
I only raise that because if we wait to have the solar question conversation with the land use section, then it would give us time to see how some of that's going to shake out from a Richmond perspective.
Yes. I think to open a jar of pungent aroma, speaking of things that will come from the General Assembly, there's definitely movement afoot to possibly show retail cannabis growth. And as a college town, it feels like that's probably a discussion that I know I've been pestering Dr. Davis here for a little while about that because I just foresee it falling into our laps to discuss at some point. And I don't know, being from a small town, what that portends from public input, but
Something.
I was going to say, is that something we need to put in the comp plan for the future, or to talk about? Or is that something we just need to talk about making changes?
Right now, it's more about, do you want to agree with the bill that's in the General Assembly or bills that they have, different ones, or against it? So we're getting a little bit off topic, but until the legislation is passed, or not. But if it's not, we're good. If it's passed, yes, it will affect the comprehensive plan. It will affect zoning ordinances and everything like that. But from a standpoint right now, it doesn't have any effect. But if it is approved in the bills that they have in the General Assembly, it will have definitive changes that we will have to make from a zoning standpoint and a land use standpoint and a tax standpoint.
One other thing I'd like to toss in there just for, if you haven't taken the Citizens Police Academy, You should. It's a pretty cool experience, speaking as someone who's done it twice now. But one thing I learned was that the way the laws are structured right now is that there's not any place in town that's not close enough to a school or educational facility where cannabis or other drugs don't automatically become verboten, not allowed, something like that.
That depends on how the bill's written. So there's a few out there. I think one right now is 1,000 feet. And so, yeah, it's going to be really dependent on how the language is actually written, whether it
It's not
affects
just,
us.
it's not just being close to a school, it's being close to a school property as well. It's not just.
Yeah, but
like-
there's one language also that you can't use. You can't distinguish between parks and things like that. You can do churches, religious assemblies, schools, and some other, I forget what else it is. but
Daycares.
Daycare centers. But like I said, once you don't know until the final piece is passed, if it's passed. The other thing is, there's only going to be, like originally in the bill, 300 and some licenses issued from the Commonwealth. So will we get more than one license here out of all the area in Virginia that they issue to somebody? At the same time, you can't just count on that as one of the only factors, but we got to look at the distances. So that's really something that we have to wait and see what's passed, which is a little off topic for this, by the way.
Well, any additional discussion at this time concerning these 4 chapters?
Can I make a recommendation, Mayor?
Yes.
That after this meeting, that the Planning Commission digest what we've talked about, the council digest what we've talked about, and then share those things with staff so that we can then have it at the next joint meeting. We can start it off by a feedback session of what we really want to change in these 4 sections. So we move it forward that way. Start the initial set discussion on transportation, since that's the real next big one we have to have. And then go from there with the others in the same maybe format. And maybe recommend a night opposite. This was easier to get in, but actual a whole different night from a planning commission meeting and a council meeting that's on a whole different date for both bodies.
I like that idea.
Is that doable?
Just because this whole time I've been mindful that these folks have to now get up here and conduct their business, and I'm mindful of people's time. But yeah, I value that for sure. Does that work for you all?
Sounds good for us.
Well, if there's no other discussion from this council, I thank the Planning Commission for allowing us to jump in on your meeting, and thank you for being here. And if there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the town council portion of this joint meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Dr. Miller?
I hear a motion to adjourn the planning commission side of our joint meeting with town council. Mr. Patterson's made a motion. Do I hear a second? Ms. Fraley's made a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we're adjourned.
I cede the chair.
Good to see you. Thank you very much. I apologize for extending that.
live somewhere else and he wants to. Is what I got from him.
I haven't seen that letter.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All right, well, yeah, please forward it to me.
He must have sent a text to all the council. Bruce Davis is I'm gonna send to reach out to you.
All right, appreciate it, thank you.
Absolutely.
Hello.
I'm supposed to tell you thank you very much for helping.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Your man, he will not stop.
No, he doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
I will make it over there, but I mean, I'm really happy.
Wait, I have my stuff. He's always thinking, I mean, we're clearing out that.
I don't know if y'all ran out of time or what, but like, kind of get the easy stuff alone.
It's hard to say, like, if we get, not, it's lucky snow, and then turn to ice. We get some ice along with the snow, most likely we'll, but in town.
We'll talk to you later, okay? Good stuff,
But,
hey man, how are you?
actually, I was on medium cold this afternoon. It's usually, closer, except like Friday morning, they would have information.
Can you have somebody tomorrow?
Sure, maybe have some updates tonight.
She tried. I'll push back.
When I know
Yeah, no, that's fine. Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
We really want to make sure people are happy.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm very good.
Okay, cool. Yep, all right, well, enjoy yourselves.
Thank you.
Wow.
But I've sat for too long, now I have to stand.
Are you still enjoying your house? It's on First Avenue, right?
I love it.
Yeah, it's a great one, isn't it? These old houses?
I
No, yeah, I can hear you.
am trying to decide if I'm gonna stay and stick around this
I think I
weekend.
just,
Yeah,
We have a farm that in Buckingham that has a generator.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, but I don't want to be traveling.
It's hit and miss in the avenues. It can be hit and miss in the avenues. That's the problem. We've got a little generator, we can run our refrigerator, our computer, internet, and a couple other things. The furnace. Yeah, that's the tricky thing. Is the furnace, because meaning we have radiators. Do you have radiators still?
Yeah, those are tricky.
Yeah, we're lucky we got into a house with still functioning, because you don't want to try and put them in afterwards.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare.
But that's great. Well, okay, good luck. Woohoo!
Yeah, actually, I was texting my husband and I was like, we're going to get a generator next week.
Yeah, seriously.
Don't care.
Yeah. Fortunately, the house that I have currently has always been like one of those special.
Hey, Abby, what's on the agenda tonight?
Where loses power. Bio. Well, but last year, January.
Oh yeah, the water. It just crashed. Like, what do you even do? Like, what did you do? I would be like, getting up to. Oh yeah, that's what I would have done.
And I wasn't working at the time, so.
Goodbye.
So it's okay.
I need a shower.
Yeah, but like a whole smoke.
God.
Yeah, like so. Like,
Disaster.
it was like the new thing.
This is like. Welcome.
Yeah, right.
This is what makes me want to be like a doomsday prepper. Like, I want to be like, should I be stocking up water constantly? I'm a panic buyer. I am the problem.
Panic buyer, you're a
Yes,
problem?
I am the problem. People are like, don't rush to the store. And I'm like, I'm going to the store. Get out of the way. Yeah. So I am the problem.
Get power loaded.
Yeah, my broadband's getting filled tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see. I just,
Harriet was like, I'm gonna go, she's in Richmond getting her hair done. Just forego that, there's a generator.
that's what, yeah. Jay texted me that. He was like, let's just get a generator. And I was like, let's just put it on the credit card. Who cares?
Good night.
Yeah. I gave it my best shot. I think it's very confusing. Let's hone it. Really. Yeah.
You can get started. You can get started.
Okay. I call this meeting of the Town of Farmville Planning Commission to order. Ms. Austin, would you please do a roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Weiss? Ms. French? Here. Mrs. O'Connor?
Here.
Mr. Patterson? Mr. Crute?
Here.
Ms. Fraley?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Here. All right, our next item of, next agenda item is the approval of the agenda. I do have one question. Do we have minutes that, for our last meeting that we need to consider?
No, I have not finalized those minutes.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Ms. Fraley has made a motion. Mr. Crute has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Our next item of business is the annual election of officers. I think, Ms. French, you're new to the board, so this is our organizational meeting. We do three kind of organizational things this evening. The first is elect officers, chairperson, vice chair, and secretary. The second thing that we do is we have our, we'll do this at the end of the meeting, the consideration and adoption of our annual report and our goals for the next year, and then the consideration and adoption of the meeting dates. So this annual election of officers is our first organizational task. The floor is open now for the nomination for chairperson.
I nominate the illustrious and wise Dr. Miller to continue as chair.
I accept that nomination. I guess as somebody who's been nominated for chair, I need to defer to our vice chairperson to now run this. You remember Robert's Rule of Order?
Hold on to your hats. Are there any other motions for the floor?
I second your motion to nominate Dr. Miller.
All right. It has been motioned and seconded. Do we need roll call vote, Ms. Austin, or is it just majority?
Ms. Fraley?
Aye.
Dr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Crute?
Aye.
Mr. Patterson? Ms. O'Connor?
Aye.
Ms. French?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss? The motion passes.
All right, well, thank y'all very much. I appreciate that vote of confidence. Very kind of you.
Quickest coup in the history of the planning commission.
Our next item of business is the nomination and election of a vice chairperson. The floor is now open for nominations for vice chair. Ms. Fraley?
I'd like to nominate Patrick Crute.
Mr. Crute, you accept the nomination?
I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. French is seconded. Are there other nominations? Other nominations? All right, the floor for nominations for vice chair is closed. Ms. Austin, would you please do a roll call vote?
Dr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Fraley?
Aye.
Mr. Crute?
Aye.
Mr. Patterson? Mrs. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mrs. French?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
right,
Motion passes.
congratulations. Thank you very much, Mr. Crute. Our final nomination and election is for the position of secretary. The floor is now open for nominations. Ms. Fraley?
Oh, no.
No, you had your light on.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Are there any nominations?
Nominate Abby O'Connor.
Ms. O'Connor's been nominated. Ms. O'Connor, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Crute has made the second. Are there any other nominations for the position of secretary? The floor for nominations is now closed. Ms. Austin, would you please do a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Dr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Fraley? Mr. Crute?
Aye.
Mr. Patterson? Mrs. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mrs. French?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Ms. O'Connor. All righty. Our next item of business is public comment period. Are there anyone wish to speak about issues not on the agenda?
We do not have anybody signed up to speak.
All right, thank you very much. Our next item of business is old business. It's the sidewalk ordinance. And our esteemed town attorney has shared with staff a beginning of a revision to the sidewalk ordinance based on the feedback that we gave them at our November meeting. Ms. Hawkins, would y'all care to kind of give us some background or a brief on kind of what went into this?
I did not prepare a background. I figured it's old business, so we're just basing our discussion off of what's been proposed in this draft ordinance.
Anything you want to share about kind of things that kind of went into this, what you feel confident about, or maybe need some further guidance? There's some holes kind of need to be filled in here, as we see, but just anything you think we need to know for our situational awareness?
Yes, thank you. Anytime I come up to one of these things, I always want to say Your Honor because that's what I'm so used to. But so if I do say that, I apologize. I'm trying to pull it up. Just give me 1 second because I printed out this packet, but it has multiple pages in it. Well, first and foremost, you can see that there's a difference just in format because there's basically a part 1 and a part 2. That was done upon y'all's suggestion, or maybe it was my suggestion with your approval just to see kind of what that would look like. By no means necessary. However, I think it's good to clarify if, it seemed important to you guys when a sidewalk would be required on one side of the road versus on both sides of the road. Going through section 1A, I do not pretend to be good at math. I don't pretend to be able to calculate density. That's why I went to law school. But this is kind of what I put together on maybe how something could start being calculated on when they would be required based on density. I'm sure I know staff has some additional suggestions on how some of those holes can be filled. If you go down to part B, I removed part of what I guess was originally included on what was defined as infrastructure. I sent Ashley a secondary, and I don't know if you got it, but I hope you did, definition of what infrastructure would mean, and that would be included in that chapter. I don't have that definition in front of me, but I can certainly pull it up on my computer. The rest I kind of left the same, just based on comment, because you guys wanted to further discuss it. Now, if you go down to section 2, this is kind of where our comments were leading, but everything can be amended or adjusted. This is just, again, a rough draft based on our last conversation. So that is all I have for you all today, unless you have some questions.
Any questions? Any questions so far? All right, thanks so much. Yeah,
Sorry, just
go
one.
ahead, Cindy.
Just for clarity, in section 1, you says when one of the following conditions are met. In section 2, it just says in the following conditions. Can I assume that it's also the same where it's like if you are meeting one of the conditions?
I think that's up to your discretion.
Okay.
That's how I kind of perceived it to be. But if you want to change the wording, for sure we can do that. But yeah, I think it would be if one of these conditions are met.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, just to provide an additional comment, I did conduct quite a bit of research on various localities' sidewalk ordinance, and I was unable to find any that calculated any sort of density requirement or included any sort of density requirement. So I did not have a lot to go off on, but I just wanted to let you guys know that because it's not a widely adopted procedure at this point. So,
Any questions? Any comments?
I guess the follow-up there is that what is most standard in your research? If this zoning, then sidewalks are required and it's just one zone or however.
I think they will include certain zoning districts, but if you go back and review some of our previous draft ordinances, that's more in line with what we would see, rather than a calculation of density. And again, I think maybe staff could comment on that better than I, on how density is used. So,
Robert, Ashley, got anything?
I'll give a comment, and then Robert can give a comment as well. I would say from a staff point of view, we would rather see this based on the number of lots being created and less on density. It is harder to calculate density both for staff and for developers. Not all developers are coming in making 200 subdivision lots. You do have smaller developers in this area that you work with. I think density would be harder for us to enforce than if it was just the number of lots. I'll let Robert give his opinion.
Yeah, this is more specific to density as a metric in general. It's definitely not used often in triggering sidewalk requirements, and in fact, it's typically used as a minimum density requirement for zoning districts. And the trend now in planning is to move away from metrics like that and focus more on form and design of the built environment instead of like calculated metrics like that, qualitative measures.
So when you say, I have a kind of a vague idea when you're talking about form and design, but can you expand upon that in this particular context? We have a little bit more clarity and maybe the comparative advantage of thinking about either density or lot size.
Well, I'll give a good example. The city of Waynesboro frames their subdivision ordinance into new street and sidewalk being installed and subdivisions fronting on existing streets or sidewalks. And so then within the new infrastructure installations, they have specific requirements which are easier for developers to meet because it's all brand new. And then they have specific requirements for subdivisions that front on existing right-of-way. So with that, I noticed they specified a width, which we do as well. They also specified that sidewalks will require a buffer be dedicated to the town as well between the sidewalk and the curb installation. They very, very seamlessly allowed for a single sidewalk or pathway versus one on either side of a right-of-way, with the expectation that it met AASHTO measurement requirements, width requirements. So that's the more like form. So like visualizing what an end result is that we want to chase, and building an ordinance around that, rather than calculated metrics to eliminate or trigger the requirement of sidewalks.
In the beginning of your explanation, you said a required width. Is that the width of the sidewalk, or is that specificity around distance from curbing and or roadway?
So there was specified distances for both.
Okay.
They in the case of Waynesboro, they used a 5-foot sidewalk, and then I think it was either a 2 or 3 foot sidewalk buffer. And the way that their ordinance is introduced is that on new installation, the expectation is that one on either side of the right-of-way is the default. So then everything is based off of that subsequently.
And then you also said path and sidewalk. Is there language that allows for?
Yeah, so you could allow a single multi-use path, and that language was specific, multi-use versus sidewalk. So pedestrian, bicycle, we could create an ordinance that's, either allowed or disallowed electric scooters, bicycles. We could get as specific as we wanted to with that. But they referenced AASHTO for their dimensional standards. So we could create our own, or it's great to leverage existing national level. So a little bit different framing than how we've created here with 2 sections that are based on 1 versus 2. They framed it new versus existing.
So just so I understand, you're saying form is the new versus old?
I wouldn't call theirs specifically a form-based ordinance. It might be inspired by form, but it's not legislating just on the way it looks. It's kind of a hybrid.
So if what I'm hearing is correct, the reason we weren't able to find any precedents for sidewalk ordinances in comparable municipalities here in Virginia is because you were having difficulty finding these metrics because people are going away from metrics.
I'm sure that's a significant contributing factor.
Right. Interesting.
And you'll also see that the trend is moving away from average daily trips to trying to decenter automobile dependency when you're considering pedestrian infrastructure.
And in the constructs that you're describing, when you say new, does that mean there is no existing road or right-of-way, like it's being added as part of the subdivision?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
You mentioned building the ordinance around the result that you want to chase. So is there a specific result the town has in mind that they want, is the end goal here?
I don't know that there's one specifically outlined, but we could make inferences from the comprehensive plan, previous ordinances.
I guess that's what kind of we've been. I guess kind of what we've been chasing here is, pedestrian safety. Having sidewalks where it makes sense to, but also, the whole point of this, revision is to do so in a way that makes sense versus people kind of doing it, following the letter of law versus the spirit of the ordinance. But as we've also heard, from people who spoke, to do so in a way that's affordable for developers, so that we can make, developments, more where it's reasonable to make them more affordable housing, so that doesn't get, built into the cost of things. Is that, you think, a correct summary of what we're chasing here?
Yes.
So dang, I thought density would do it. Thought that would be like I guess we all kind of thought that would be the way to, if you're focused on density, you figure that helps decide the number of sidewalks based on safety, but also helps kind of, mitigate, make sense in terms of some of the costs. And provides kind of clear thresholds, so you can't do an end around the ordinance. Dang it. Dang.
In one of the previous packets, somebody included the SSAR pedestrian accommodations requirement flowchart, which I personally loved. I think it's great. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's very easy to follow. So are you saying that metrics like this, where it's looking more at average daily trips, that is not the template that we want to go with?
I think there are a lot of mechanisms that are really sophisticated and nuanced that might be best applied to localities that are dealing with high volume development. And the forecast of, residential sprawl in Farmville is probably a lot lower than other localities.
So even if we scaled this more, like take the same template, but scaled it more for small town life than big city, you're saying still like the flow chart, the metrics is not what we're trying to go with?
That, in my professional opinion, yeah, I would avoid any of those like hard quantifiable metrics. Qualitative.
That flow chart in particular was shared because the current ordinance says reasonably required. And so for staff to kind of review something about what it means to be reasonably required, that's kind of our go-to that we look at to say, okay, the subdivision based on VDOT standards should be reasonably required. So that it's not necessarily spelled out what's required in our ordinance, but that it gives inference to where you're going to look for that information. And that's why that flow chart was included.
I just want to make sure that we're not. Do you all have the same opinion? And if you don't, that's fine. I'm just trying to clarify, like, are we saying lots, the number of lots being subdivided, is that something you're included in when you say metrics, or is metrics specific to like ADT and density?
No, I think quantity of lots is a much better way to measure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with, we want to see number of lots created.
So with that, I mean, and Mr. Chair, we're just giving feedback tonight. Is that correct?
Well, I guess, and yeah, I guess what I imagine that we'd aspire to do this evening, given the hour and given that it already seems like we're inclined to go into a different direction, was to kind of identify, yes, in terms of feedback, what we like about this. Also, what we need to reconsider to discuss further. And I'm assuming since there's billable hours, we don't need to apologize for wasting your time.
I'm here to make you happy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But then also, what we like about this, what we feel confident about, what we need to discuss further, and are there gaps that still haven't been addressed that we still need to consider about this? So, are people comfortable with kind of thinking about giving feedback in those three categories? All right. So wear it out.
So, not to contradict you, sir, but I don't think the time has been wasted. In my mind, I think we probably grasped at density in our last meeting as something easily, at least identifiable, maybe not easily calculated. But if we take as drafted section 1, replace, the density and put in lot number, looking for a recommendation from staff on, number of lots being subdivided to fill that in. I think, that part still makes sense to me as drafted with that edit. That just could be me. Number one. Number two is I do want to see something that provides flexibility in the type of infrastructure we are requiring. I think we talked about that. It really, and I think that was a direct response to some of the feedback we heard two or three meetings ago, whenever it was. So, and however we define that, sidewalks, and then I think we joked about golf cart paths and things of that, like whatever those groups and definitions are, I think that's in my opinion, a critical addition. The other part is I like the example from Martinsville about new versus old, but this just me off the cuff. But I we have subdivisions of not small size in town that are on existing right of ways. So my gut reaction to that is that it's not solving the loophole that we have currently. So I would suggest we continue to kind of go down this vein as drafted, where we have one, it's required on one side, and then the two is like, this is when we need it.
If I can add to that, so I think some language that, rewatching the last meeting, I think we were all kind of coming at it from a couple of different perspectives, language-wise. And the two main was this a requirement for the subdivided properties, or was this the subdivider or subdivision is responsible for dedicating additional right-of-way along local collector arterial routes within a subdivision? So then the size of the subdivision doesn't necessarily matter at a certain point. You're going to have you could insert the language that sidewalks are required along local collector arterial. You could make a distinction based on the type of road or the function of the road that's being put in for new infrastructure.
Right, and just to clarify, I mean, I don't think it's time wasted. I imagine it was an exercise in frustration, looking for precedents. But yeah, I mean, this is, again, I think we're got two potentially complementary, but that seem on the surface, how do we ensure safety? How do we ensure affordability? And we heard that's priorities, for not just us, but for council. And so I think we aspire to, and it's unfortunate that, or maybe there's good reasons why, we're moving away from these metrics. So if I'm hearing people correctly, some of the questions that we need to go back and come up with thresholds, what we need to be answered in a revision to this ordinance is, first of all, so it's the number of lots created. That's one thing I think that, an answer that we definitely solved that was kind of ambiguous in that first thing. It was just number of lots, but we're focusing on number of lots created. Number of lots created. But I reckon that's a threshold we still need a recommendation on, especially including on not just whether there's one sidewalk, but two sidewalks. And hopefully that answer is easy to find or easier to calibrate based on, our local circumstances here. Or maybe there's a set of kind of defining criteria that could come in. Am I right in thinking about that?
Yes, I mean, I think so. And I think that also then gives us an opportunity to define where it needs to be on both sides and where we can allow one side.
Mm-hmm. Then it sounds like the other question we would like to see addressed or clarified are we talking about, is it applicable to subdividers or subdivision? All right.
Yep.
Everybody. And then also, it sounds like, does there need to be an additional criteria or language in the ordinance that speaks to the type of road, whether it's an arterial, or is that what I'm hearing too?
It could. You could use that as a way to allow or disallow a single sidewalk on both sides.
Is that specific to, are they using that as the trigger for one side or two, or for the trigger for the sidewalk period?
In the example that I was referencing from Waynesboro, their default was sidewalk on both sides of all local, collector, and arterial in new subdivisions or new infrastructure. So like I said, their default was both sides. And then there were, yeah.
We only have 3 arterial streets in town. And that's going to be Main Street, 3rd Street, and Oak Street. Everything else is going to be either collector local or just a local street.
Okay. So that sounds like it could be like, if we're looking at this one right here, when any one of the following measures are met, you know, it'd be kind of a road, is what you're saying. Okay. So then it also sounds like we would welcome some criteria that speak to the flexibility of infrastructure required by the sidewalks, including the type of sidewalk itself. We've been throwing around this word sidewalk, but you mentioned pedestrian pathway. You know, I remember Ian Brock has said there's, you know, different kinds of things with, you know, asphalt types of, I remember, you know, Mr. Hardy is kind of, you know, he had some suggestions in mind. And so maybe we can vague up the language to allow, you know, to kind of meet the end, but also provide some flexibility for the developer. Is that something that can be explored and recommended?
I think from our side, our task was to see if VDOT actually funded any type of these multi-use trails or just sidewalks. So it's on the staff side, that is something that we have to find out from VDOT, if
Okay.
we can get funding
Right.
for multi-use trails.
Right.
There's also the consideration that since it is additional right-of-way that will be dedicated to the town, it falls within our responsibility to maintain. So if you have a suite of different materials used across all pedestrian infrastructure, that's complicating for Public Works in a space that they didn't have a voice in communicating about.
Okay.
The VDOT funding, is that to build it or maintain it?
To maintain it. Maintenance.
And is there ever a situation if it's a non-standard sidewalk path, whatever are they always going to be in a right-of-way ceded to the town?
New ones would be in the right-of-way deeded to the town. Existing, I don't know if all the existing is in town right-of-way or not.
Right, but why is that? Because I think when we had the conversation a month or two ago, we talked about there are some, I think we used Miss O'Connor's neighborhood as an example where the lots are generously sized and, you know, maybe a path of some sort is required, but it doesn't have to be 3.5 to 5 feet from the edge of the road. And so if that's the case, if we're just saying like, and I think not Harper's Mill in Chesterfield, what's the other one across the street? Magnolia Green is an example, and they're 15 feet off the road, if I recall correctly. So are we saying if we have that construct where it's a path and there's no need for it to be close enough to require curbing and guttering, that we're going to extend the right-of-way to the town?
I don't know that if it's not extended to the, if it's not dedicated to the town, that it wouldn't meet a sidewalk requirement. That would be an amenity that the developer can offer to their home buyers.
That would be like a homeowners association that would be responsible for taking care of it.
Well, I understand the maintenance part in that construct, but I think what you just said then, if it's not within a set right-of-way,
right,
it can't be a required sidewalk.
It wouldn't satisfy the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking about wanting to move it towards the number of lots created, but I guess I know you don't like the density thing, but I still am just trying to make that make sense to me, where it's like number of lots, but over what size of area?
It's just going to be the number of lots, you can just throw out a number. 40 lots. If the subdivision is 40 lots or more, it requires sidewalks. If the subdivision is 10 lots or more, I mean that's a number that you all come up with. What do you want to see? Is it 35 lots? Is it 50? It doesn't really matter that you're subdividing 33 acres or 10 acres. It's how many lots do you want to see that require sidewalks?
I guess it kind of, like, I'm starting to awaken some memories of that conversation. Like, but then I think we started talking about, well, if it's a lot, but you got a multifamily housing unit on it, that's when we started gravitating toward
But
density.
that's a different scenario because that's going to be a commercial property for the multifamily. It's considered, it's not going to be in your R1, your R2 zoning. It's a different scenario.
It's R3 though, right?
It is, but it comes with its own standards.
For sidewalks? Like, this
I
is
think
applying to
multifam-
all properties subdivided in B1, B2, B3,
But
R1, R2,
a
R3.
multifamily is also not going to be per se a subdivision. It might be built on 5 acres that they're not subdividing.
I think the multifamily use also triggers a site plan.
Plan review, which requires a sidewalk.
Okay, so maybe not multifamily, but like, for example, where I live, it's a single acre, it's 1 lot, it's got 9 dwellings on it. So, I mean, it's very sensible that we need a sidewalk, but it's individual dwelling, it's not multi-family units, but it's all still within 1 lot. So, I mean, in here, I like how you have number of dwelling units as opposed to number of lots, because I feel like it allows for situations like mine.
I will say cottages are not an allowed use in our zoning ordinance as is. That's a different scenario.
Yeah, so that's not something we would see unless we change the zoning
Zoning
ordinance to allow that as a residential use going forward.
It's a great situation,
Yeah,
that's all I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
They work awesome.
And so with that, you would have, special standards to go with that residential use that could dictate that there have to be sidewalks within or to it. But that would be attached to that specific residential use, potentially.
I mean, like, what are you talking about? Like a specific residential use, like a
So
PUD?
No, so for that specific, like, that use, it's not a single-family home, it's not a duplex, it's a cottage court, or however, it could be termed. So you could have specific standards for that use.
I guess we had them, well, no, we had to do something with that, because I remember when that came before us.
It had to get special approval, I do remember that.
Yeah, I'm going to say that was approved prior to 2020 with the zoning ordinance that we're looking at now.
Oh, so that came in the old one, so, okay, I got you. But still, the units doesn't make sense. It still makes more sense to say lots. All right, so what I have written down so far is I guess the other thing is, I mean, you say we can come up with a number. But I think, am I alone in wishing that we had some recommendations based on kind of what the average are, what the plausibility of the development's going to be here? I mean, actually, you started off by saying, it's just like 2 or 3 versus, 200.
It is completely up to you all. Mr. Lapp's subdivision was 39 lots. We had one proposed for 10 lots that would, over in Jackson Avenue. I mean, is that really something that we want to see sidewalks now? Because there are no sidewalks in that neighborhood. But it's completely up to you how many lots you want to see.
Are there comparable localities that we can at least look at?
Ashland is 50 lots. Did Waynesboro have a number?
Their default was that every new local collector arterial had sidewalks in it on both sides with, I think,
With
very,
no
very,
restrictions for
very
lots.
little,
Number of lots.
exceptions. So
Was it
that
for
also,
one or two sidewalks? For two?
either, for, the example was for either side, both sides.
Both sides.
Yeah. I think this goes back to kind of the anticipated form that we're looking for as well. I think a lot of times we envision the kind of conventional standard American sprawling building pattern that's sinuous streets, cul-de-sacs, 30 cul-de-sacs in a development. That's been proven to be very unsustainable for localities and for homeowners. So, envisioning a built environment that's different and maybe more reflective of traditional historic gridded patterns wouldn't make a sidewalk on both sides of a road feel like a burden. In fact, it would make a lot more sense to the users that are occupying that space.
So that's what you mean by form. It's by the form of the.
Yeah, absolutely, of the land use patterns. But also thinking of the right-of-way in a cross-section, that's also a form to be considered.
I guess we're gonna have to reckon with at some point in time this number of lots. But I'm gonna avoid the difficult question right now and kind of skip on to something else. Just again, thinking about some things that we like, things that we want to keep, but things we want to kind of revisit. And so looking at kind of the language you got in front of us right now, you said you come up with you sent Ashley a new definition of what infrastructure is.
I have it in front of me. I can read it if you'd like.
Sure.
Infrastructure, foundational systems and facilities that support the functioning of the town, including essential public services such as water supply, sewer services, transportation, public rights-of-way, and electricity. Right, it would be running new water sewer lines and new streets.
What about this 80 foot of existing parcel being subdivided with 80 feet of existing public sidewalk?
Oh, yes, as a refresh from last meeting, that number was determined as the minimum lot width for the R1 residential district.
So any lot that's being subdivided has to be at least 80 feet.
In the R1.
R1.
That's the minimum.
And I think that makes sense if it's, if you're building something that's right next to where there already is sidewalk, let's just keep the sidewalk going.
Now, do we need to put something in there that speaks to R2 and R3? Those lot sizes are different?
I think that having 80 as the point that triggers a sidewalk makes sense because the other two residential districts are by design more dense and should by default have a more established pedestrian infrastructure. So they would typically be within that 80 feet. So it would make more sense to see more sidewalks in R2 and R3.
So you're saying 80 would cover anything in the R districts, the residential districts? Roger. So then we also have, so I guess we also want to keep, if the comprehensive plan has identified the property to be subdivided as a priority for future pedestrian infrastructure, that's something we want to keep in there?
I think so. And it gives us some flexibility to make sure that we're honoring the comprehensive plan and as it evolves.
We've already discussed whether or not it's plausible. Y'all going to do some research when it's plausible to create a little bit more flexibility about the construction materials of the concrete, what they look like. We've already discussed that. And then I suppose we have to keep this, nothing in this section shall alter VDOT's authority to require the stop. Okay, we got to keep that. Okay. All right.
Just going back to item D, I think in our last meeting we had a conversation about how that could adversely affect certain property owners, and is there a way to tie that to common sense? Like if I'm, subdividing a property on 3rd Street, but there's no, probably bad example, because 3rd Street has relatively good sidewalks. But if I'm, be that as it may, if I'm subdividing a property for future infrastructure, but there's nothing else anywhere close to me, like, is that a unnecessary tax on that individual property owner? Is there a way to box that in some other fashion?
I guess that's what we came up with when we had to give the waiver to Dominion, right? So would it be waiverable, or do we want to even get into the waiverable parts, or is there a way to kind of prevent that?
That one is not part of a subdivision. That's a specific site plan that was reviewed. So it's a different section of the zoning ordinance. But I think this goes back to your number of lots. If depending on how many lots are created, do you require sidewalks?
I think personally, I'm probably okay with having that in section 1. It's when we get into like having the 2 sidewalks that I think I'm more worried about that specific line.
And if you're specifically talking about what's in the comprehensive plan, correct? Okay. There is one map in the comprehensive plan. We did not get to it today. It's under, I think it's under transportation. And it's the sidewalk map, which basically shows where we have sidewalks now. And that's kind of, it does have a small section of proposed sidewalks, but it's going to be like East 3rd, West 3rd, Main Street, and Longwood Avenue. But that's definitely a map you can look at to gauge whether you think we need to remove that section or amend that section in this ordinance.
It's also pretty common for localities to have supplemental, whether they're adopted as an appendix of the comprehensive plan, have really thorough pedestrian planning, walkability planning that would include very specific forecasted plans for pedestrian infrastructure that staff could reference.
That's what we got now, we're aspiring to get, right?
We do have a transportation plan that was created, I think, 2010, I think. So we do have a plan. It might need to be updated.
All right, so let's take a quick look at the second part when we're talking about, well, I guess this is also going to be kind of subject to change given if we're shifting the criteria. I guess we want to say if there's an existing sidewalk adjacent to the subdivision, that's something we want to keep, I'm assuming. We create these little islands. Within all commercial districts. We already talked about E. Okay, so we're coming back to the sticky part and thinking about thresholds or starting points for thresholds for the number of lots. I'm just going to ask a candid question, and I appreciate you deferring to our authority and our recommendations. Thank you very much. But I guess kind of help us think about like what's the so we got if you say Ashland's is 50, Mr. Lapp's was 39, we got one with 10. So like walk us through, kind of like, if you wouldn't mind, like talk aloud about what's pardon me, if we want to kind of create a walkable community, it's like let's do 10. Let's do maybe less than that. Maybe not 2, but like what's the pros and cons of going smaller versus going big? Cindy, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, I guess you said let's go 10. I'm going back to like where Abby lives, where I grew up, which has maybe 12 lots.
I think it's probably about.
It's not more than 20. It's not more than 20.
No, you're probably
Which,
right. It's
I
one of my lots is number 3.
I think it's right
Yeah.
at 18 or 20 lots
Yeah.
over in that subdivision.
So, I mean, 20 lots, let's say, and it's very walkable without sidewalks.
Because we're a cul-de-sac. We don't have cars.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that's kind of it. It's like it's that old cul-de-sac, and so you're right. If you kind of grow up in that, but now if we kind of say, okay, 20 lots it is, but then there's now all of a sudden there's kind of a traditional design as you were talking about. Does that mitigate the number, or does it not matter? I'm not trying to overcomplicate it. I'm just kind of synthesize some variables here.
I don't think we can distinguish between like the cul-de-sac form and a different form, because if you take my subdivision, for example, which is probably about 20 lots, we need sidewalks, which we don't have, because we get a lot of traffic. So from that perspective, it's the same, maybe same number of lots, but it's a very different traffic pattern.
Yeah.
But I don't think we want to get into the business of carving out cul-de-sacs.
Is your subdivision, is your traffic just coming from residents, or is there through traffic coming from other places?
It's just coming from residents.
And that's a phased subdivision. I think your section is like phase 3 of the subdivision. And there's at least 1, if not 2 more sections that were phased.
So just for the record, this is Wednesday, right? And I've almost been hit by 3 cars this week without sidewalks. So just to reiterate the reason for this conversation. Also, you don't need to have your bright lights on in neighborhoods with street lights, but be that as it may. Mr. Chair, I'm trying not to derail us from progress, but I also am tempted to make the recommendation that we postpone this part of the conversation and see how the other aspects of the ordinance as drafted and based on the edits we've provided tonight come together. Because I will say publicly, there is part of me that's starting to think there might be some value in the suggestion from other localities where we standardize everybody has 2 sidewalks and work our way backwards from there, as opposed to what we're doing now where we're essentially saying nobody has sidewalks. And then if this, then that, then you get to 1 or 2. And there's just some aspects of this that I don't think are lining up as cleanly as we want them to be. So, and they could be refined to the point after, the edits from this evening that they are, but again, if we're going to take the time to deliberate and do this correctly, I think I'd like to wait to talk about the number of lots until we see what the next version is. If we go this way this evening, I'd also ask staff to share the examples of the ordinances that are, I think they've I think there's been Martinsville and maybe one or two others that say everybody starts with 2 sidewalks and then work, different conditions thereafter. It takes it down to 1 or a path versus a sidewalk. I'd be interested in reading those. Yes, please.
You got something?
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification. So, do you want us to provide you guys, I say us as like a joint us, provide you guys like different examples for comparable localities and make these suggestions that you've suggested tonight?
I think so. I think rather than seeing just more and more examples,
That's fine.
what I'm hearing us say is we'd still like to see a revision of our ordinance, but also just have some additional kind of brain food and some additional examples.
Do you want, based on those additional examples, like another maybe draft of what something from us would look like an additional sample ordinance that kind of coincides with those other localities' ordinances?
If I'm hearing the commissioners correctly, and do y'all agree with what Patrick is suggesting, that we start off with 2 as a standard and then move back, okay. So, and I can write this up in an email and send it to you, send it to everybody, or send it to you and you can disseminate. I think what we're looking, yes, we want to see a revision of an ordinance for us. One that starts with 2 sidewalks or sidewalks on both sides of the streets as a standard, and then come up with thresholds that would shift it to 1 sidewalk on one side of the street or no sidewalks at all. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's a little bit far. If everybody's thinking the same way, I'm fine with that, but I think it's a little bit farther than what I was suggesting. Like, I was thinking we continue to refine this because there is goodness and it does represent our deliberations heretofore. I'm not 100% convinced on the standardized 2 sidewalks yet. So, if everybody agrees that starting there and working back to 1 and then none makes more sense, then I'm fine with that change of direction. But it would represent a change from where we are.
But that's the change you recommended, right? You said you like?
I want that for the standardized 2. I just wanted to see the examples from the other localities and continue to refine this to see if it cleans up as we go.
Simultaneously at the same time?
Yeah, and not start on the 2, but if not start on ordinance that will require 2 sidewalks and work back from there.
Oh,
But-
see, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. If everybody else is already there mentally, that starting with 2 sidewalks and working backwards.
Yeah, and see what
Is more
criteria,
logical
like,
than-
makes it, 1 and then none.
Does that make sense?
Yes, we got it.
And then I think, and again, I'll include this in an email, but I think some of the other things that we would like to see in this revision to the ordinance is, the 80 feet, comp plan, identify property, VDOT language, that definition of infrastructure, adjacent sidewalks. But then again, also kind of after you explore it, what's the flexibility in the kind of sidewalk or pathway that's included? And then, is there flexibility in any kind of infrastructure required with the sidewalk? Is it, do we need to include things respecting the type of road that's there? And then we just leave the number of lots blank as a threshold. Is that accurate? Okay. Again, I'm happy to summarize it all up if you want.
Yeah, an email would be great. I was looking at my notes from last time, which looked like chicken scratch.
Right.
It took me a second to figure out what we needed, but that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
It's the universal challenge of us left-handers.
All right, is that people comfortable with our direction? And then at the same time, if we can decide, see, just for references, something else. Mr. Councilman, what do you think? Are we making headway?
Yes, sir.
Are we,
Two questions, observations, if I may.
Sure, certainly.
I was wondering under infrastructure.
Would you mind coming to the mic, just so we're on, since we're,
I apologize. This is just some things I was thinking. When you defined infrastructure, I didn't know if we needed to include anything like ADA compliance on what we're trying to do here. And I'm speaking specifically about the sidewalks we have down Main Street that have post mailboxes in the middle of them, things like that. So I didn't know if that was necessary. And the second thing I had was, this is very odd, but what if hypothetically a developer came along and we set that number at 7 or 8 lots? And they said, that's cool. We're going to do 7. We're going to do 6 lots, so no sidewalks. And then afterwards they said, well, we want to do 6 more over here. And they just added on. Is there a way to keep somebody from gaming the system, so much to speak? And those are the only 2 comments I have. Thank you. You guys are excellent. Really, really doing a great job.
thank you very much. Actually, when you mentioned the phase development, I was thinking about that. Yeah, how does that work?
So that one, they actually submitted the whole subdivision, and then said it was phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So when they got to phase 3, it was already, the subdivision was already drawn. They did not come back and submit another subdivision drawing. They did not get it re-recorded. It was
So they
already
would have
drawn.
had to tell you the whole amount of lots to begin with, even though they were phasing the
Phasing
project. Okay,
yes.
so I think that would be okay, because then they couldn't do an add-on and an add-on and an add-on.
Was that address what Mr. Yolen is referring to?
Yes, mostly. Again, if they had 20 acres or something and said, we're going to develop 5 acres and there's going to be this many houses on there, and you say, yeah, that's cool, go ahead, and we don't have enough for sidewalks, so don't worry about it. And then they go, we want to do this 5 acres next, individually, but they're all going to be kind of connected. I don't know if there's language we can use to make sure we're going in the direction of a walkable community.
I think the lines where we're talking about the installation of infrastructure could help catch that. So if you're kind of staging development, you would be extending infrastructure into new spaces. So that would then require sidewalks.
Yeah, because if they had raw land and they're kind of doing stuff, you'd have to extend the water and the sewage. Is that? Okay, good. Other feedback, other directions, guidance? Well, thank you all very much for your time and your hard thoughts and your good thinking and your careful listening. Okay, all right. Our next item of business is new business. It's the consideration. The first item of new business is the consideration and adoption of the 2025 annual report and 26 goals. You see a draft in that, beginning on page 8 of our packet. Man, we were busy. I was kind of totaling all this up. I was like, I think I'm done. And I was like, oh man, there's one more thing we got to do. So good job us for accomplishing a lot. And thank you very much to staff for your diligent work kind of shepherding us through this all through the pipeline. And then in terms of the actions, that's pretty boilerplate. You know, what we aspire to do. Ms. French did kind of express her interest in taking the CPC course, so thank you very much to do that. If council would be kind enough to allocate us enough money to send her to that training, that'd be great. Any questions, any recommendations for revisions, any errors? Do I hear a motion then to approve the adoption of the 2025 annual report and 2026 goals?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Crute made a motion, Mr. Connor seconded. By voice acclamation, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Our next item of business is the consideration and adoption of the 2026 meeting dates. You'll see these, pretty standard. I kind of eyeballed them pretty quickly. I didn't see any conflicts of major holidays or anything else. Unless anybody saw anything. Maybe we'll have some more joint meetings with council, it sounds like, to discuss some extra things. So there's no recommendations or edits, so I hear a motion to adopt the 2026 meeting dates.
I'll move to adopt.
Ms. Fraley made a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Crute seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Our next item of business is our staff and department updates.
Our next scheduled planning commission meeting is Wednesday, February 18th. As of right now, we don't have any upcoming cases.
So I guess we'll stand by to see kind of what kind of progress we can make on the sidewalks. And see if we can, a meeting is necessary, we got some.
Come back for discussion.
Thank you very much. Any items from the commissioners? Nothing? All right, then do I hear a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
So moved.
Mr. Crute has made a motion. Any seconds?
Second.
Ms. Fraley, a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.